Happy Christmas, and I thought it's I don't know whether you, like me, have received these very strange tweets and messages with videos about hospital corridors that look empty. There's one I received a few days ago from a lady called Debbie Hicks about a hospital in Gloucester, and I've received another one about a hospital in Ashford. And these are very, very disturbing for a number of reasons. Now, the one in Gloucester was filmed on Sunday the 27th, so it was filmed on a Sunday. And Debbie was going through the public areas of the hospital, that is, A&E and outpatients. Now, we might say, yeah, well, A&E and outpatients probably would be empty on a Sunday round about Christmas. That's not that surprising. I remember as a child, my mother had a lot of elderly friends, and as a sort of 5 or 6 year old, I was taken to these houses of these elderly friends when they were seriously ill, probably dying. And what was interesting about these visits is how quiet and how empty the houses seemed. That was because the person who was ill was upstairs in bed being cared for. Very interesting. So if one has wards, dedicated wards to caring for people who have COVID, we would expect the rest of the hospital to be quite quiet. So I'm not that surprised to see empty corridors, because Debbie certainly didn't get access to the dedicated wards where the COVID victims were being treated or recovering. So it's questionable. The logic of these videos is questionable. What is not questionable, and what's significantly more worrying, is the way in which this has been handled. So Debbie posted another video of being arrested a day or so later, and it was really quite aggressive. She was handcuffed, she was taken off to a police station, she was in her nightdress. It was very distressing. Now, this is a lady who is clearly, she's not a criminal, she's distressed. And she's distressed, and she's clearly believing the sort of conspiracy theories which are being put out. This is fodder to the anti-vaccination people. This is fodder to the conspiracy theorists. This is fodder to those who think that COVID is a fantasy, that it's a hoax. She gets increasingly angry in her video as she's going around these corridors, as indeed do the people who filmed in Ashford. Now, we also know, for example, the NHS Gloucestershire Hospital Trust, the Foundational Trust or whatever it is, had actually closed beds in November. So another reason why there might be empty space, because they were saving money because of the pressures on the system for looking after victims of COVID. But this still doesn't explain why, as a nation, we then respond with this sort of heavy-handed authority, why Debbie's MP, Siobhan Bailey, it doesn't go down to Gloucester and sort of show us the hard work that the NHS is doing. She again turns to authority. What we're hearing over the period of the COVID crisis is the heavy-handed instrument of authority rather than the encouragement to prudence and responsibility. And then if we're simply going to use this sort of firm fist of authority, we shouldn't be surprised when it fails when people like Cummings go off to have his eyes tested. Because authority is not a very sturdy creature. Authority is about power. And this, the COVID crisis, is about trying to assert our own responsibility and look after one another. So yeah, I was appalled that this was filmed by somebody who wasn't wearing a face covering and all these other things. But I was more appalled by the treatment this lady has received since posting her video, and I think this tells us that we need to get together and we need to make sure that we're standing up against nonsense which is being posted, that we're, and at the same time that we're banding together so that we don't need the figures of authority throwing their weight in our direction or in any direction. We don't need, we have to be very careful that the COVID crisis isn't seen as an opportunity to challenge authority. The COVID crisis is about pure common sense, to stay at home, to stay safe, to make sure that the disease doesn't spread. This isn't a conspiracy by the British government. And I think to effect a conspiracy on such a global basis would require so much cooperation between countries that simply do not cooperate with one another. So, and they are cooperating in this myth. If this were a conspiracy, the number of conspirators who are involved is staggering. I do not think this is a conspiracy. We can look at some of the other issues, like, for example, bed occupancy. If bed occupancy is down this year slightly, which it is, I believe in Gloucester it's down from 91 to 89%. Of course it is, because the hospitals are making sure there is bed space for people who are inevitably going to succumb to COVID in the next week or so. We've had a period of the relaxation of the regime, and this is going to have a consequence. There's also talk about the Nightingale hospitals not being used. Actually, we know at the moment that some of the Nightingale hospitals are now being prepared to be put into use. None of this is very satisfying response to those people who quite rightly are frustrated about hugely anxious, urgently anxious for their families whose loved ones are being denied cancer treatment. This is, I don't understand how we've got to this stage. It is quite clear that the present government is chaotic, that there are problems on the horizon, that we can see that there's a problem on the horizon, and that it's not being addressed at the time it should be addressed. If you see something in the distance, let's say on the beyond the moon, if you see something in a distant star, that's already happened, so it's going to hit you later. If something happens with the sun, we know we've got 8 minutes or so. So we know what we know that there is a problem, and our government has been addressing that, not at the point when the problem is identified, not at the point when the problem hits, but later, and in a way that makes me ashamed and shocked and disturbed. I expected much more of Boris, and at the same time there's this sort of domino effect throughout government, in all departments, of chaos. We can think of Gavin Williamson and the chaos in the education department. We can think of Priti Patel and the chaos in the Home Office department. If you're applying for some sort of Home Office document, it's going to take weeks, months, and these things should be automatic. The bureaucracy should not really be affected by a problem like COVID. unless the bureaucracy is not working effectively in the first place, and we know it isn't. And why is it not? Because actually there's too much of it. And why is there too much bureaucracy? Because we have used, for too long now, we've used bureaucracy as a solution to our problems. It is not a solution. It's like Christmas wrapping paper. It hides what is inside. We actually have to get rid of it. We have to take scissors to our bureaucratic nonsense. Interestingly, that was one of the prime motivators of the governments in the 1980s and 1990s. But it hasn't happened. What's happened is we've got more bureaucracy, not less. And more bureaucracy means we have to wade through this forest to actually get something done. And, the more we put on paper, the more opportunity there is for a mistake. And we have to ask, who is signing off the paper? What machines is it going through? What processes is this bureaucracy going through in order to sort itself out? Bureaucracy is a mistaken refuge. It is not a solution. We need to trim it back. And I think while we're at the trimming stage, we should get a number of resignations. I would love to see Priti Patel resign in the early new year. I would love to see Gavin Williamson resign in the early new year. And thankfully, Dominic Cummings has gone, so we can only thank God for that. But thank God, and of course our local optician. So anyway, look, have a happy new year. And for goodness sake, look at these videos in a proper perspective. As Dominic Cummings would probably be doing now, you need to put on your glasses before you look at these videos. Be careful, because COVID, I think, is not some sort of grand hoax. It's not some sort of conspiracy, and the vaccine, I think, is something that we should embrace. As indeed, what was the first mass vaccine? The first mass vaccine, I think, was rolled out by Napoleon, and he gave it to all his troops, and that's how they were so successful, because they were immune to some of the diseases which were then prevalent in Europe. Wise man. No one was saying that. And no one was saying that was a hoax. No one was doing the conspiracy theories then. Come on. Put your glasses on.